Welcome. I'm here with Professor Meeghan Z from the Department of Social Sciences and Humanities. Meeghan's been a longtime instructor in the humanities. She's taught a variety of different courses for sheer writing, philosophy, etc. And I wanted to chat with her a little bit about the transition from face-to-face to remote, some of the things that she's hearing, and also talk to a little bit about some of the uses of Zoom that she's had and how they've been successful. So Meeghan, thanks for chatting with me for a little bit. I appreciate it. And I wanted to just sort of first establish, you teach 3 courses in philosophy, and you're teaching ethics this semester.
Right.
And we had this conversation a little while ago. I think that's really interesting to be teaching ethics at this time, given all the things going on. Can you tell me a little bit about what sorts of things, just from a teaching standpoint, you've used this current situation to drive some of your conversation about ethics?
Well, on the Thursday, the 13th, I'm a planner. So, I have my plan all typed up and all my papers and ready to go. And I'm driving in my car, about 40-minute drive, and I'm listening to the news. And by the time I get within about 15 minutes, Springfield College, it is clear that whatever I have planned is not what we're going to talk about. And so in that 15 minutes, I planned a new class about basically how you analyze an ethical dilemma. And so we took that framework of looking at the problem and what are the facts and what are the complications and who's involved and what are the stakes and all these kinds of questions, and threw it up on the board, and we talked about the pandemic. The thing that was great about it, since we were able to do that, I was able to ask students the big ethical question is, what do you do with this information? What is the right thing to do with it? What is the good thing to do with it? And so I got to get a lot of suggestions from students. And one of the things we were able to do before we left campus is that students put themselves into groups of people that they work well together with. And that was invaluable, because one of the first things, I took that little workshop that you did and I learned how to use breakout rooms, one of their all-time favorite things that I think. And as each week goes by, we spend more and more time in breakout rooms. I taught a class just recently where I would talk for 3 or 4 minutes and set up the next ethical dilemma scenario and then throw them into breakout rooms to discuss it. And some students were really appreciative. Not only is it easier to talk with a smaller group, because Zoom can be so difficult to have a conversation. To have a class discussion is so much more difficult. But also one student said she was so grateful because it was the first time she had gotten to talk to other students without a faculty member in the room. Because I was the first small group, I was just check in. And so on the one hand, we got to ethically analyze the pandemic. And one of the things I do in my ethics class that's different than some other ethics professors, I emphasize taking ethical action, not just figuring out the right thing to do, but actually doing it. So we actually got to kind of practice what we preach, so we got to practice being supportive of each other and talking about our difficulties and, putting some pieces of advice into action. So that was cool.
I think that's great. And actually the idea of using the breakout rooms, I think, is terrific. Your discipline and your approach to your discipline can translate into remote in ways that other faculty, they have a little bit more challenge. So I think that's great. The point you make is really a powerful one about students feeling empowered in a situation where they actually are, in some ways, powerless. So I think that's a really powerful thing to do for the students. We've also talked a little bit about you using the polling feature. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. My students knew I was intimidated by the technology, but once I kind of got into it, the nerdy part of myself came out. I did 3 different things. One, I used polls to just get feedback about how the class is going. How is it working? Posting the assignments on Monday. How is the discussion board? Are you feeling like you're getting enough feedback? So a lot of them were really short answer or multiple choice about how is this working. But I also used it too as kind of my sneaky way to make sure people got certain pieces of information, because I know how easy it is to zone out during a lecture or to miss something on Brightspace. And so anything I thought was incredibly important, I would say, I did a little poll that had things mixed in, did you know that you have to apply to change your grade to pass fail by this date? And, the answers were yes or no. And so they would read it and get the information in a really bite-sized way. And the third way I used it was would have been more fun in the classroom. Sometimes we do ethical dilemmas and we all talk about it together. And some of them are very serious, but some are not. Some philosophers have written fanciful kind of science fiction-y ones, and we usually have a lot of fun talking about them. So I use the polls sometimes where I would give we did the prisoner's dilemma last week about social contract theory, which is all about the pandemic, but I was able to throw it up in a poll and everybody took the poll. And so we could talk about what the answers were in the class. And then we changed the scenario a little bit, and then we took the poll again, and we could see how the opinions changed based on the poll. So we actually got to do polling philosophy.
One of the things you said before I really want to follow up on about is that you're doing these interactive things with your students remotely. They're showing up.
Yeah.
And that to me is incredibly powerful and a tribute to the kinds of things you're doing and the value you're adding to the students' education by having them show up. I have talked to a number of faculty at different institutions who say that the biggest issue they're having with this remote learning is students are logging in, muting, turning off their camera, and they don't know what's going on. You've got students working and doing things dynamically, and I think that's really part of what the educational process is all about. So I think that's great. Now, let me ask you this. Do you feel like the switch from face-to-face to remote, your students leaving this class will have, first off, an understanding of ethics because that's the topic of the course, but the ability to see that ethics in different contexts based on all the things that have happened?
I did a little survey as well. Like, we have kind of a soft start to the class where I give people a few minutes to be late, and I'm putting them manually into breakout rooms, and they're usually just chatting. So the other day I asked them to keep their Zoom on, but to log into Brightspace and do a survey. And I asked them some of the questions because I'm thinking towards the fall already. I'm a compulsive planner. And I read some of them today, and it was really amazing. Like, people talked, they wrote comments about how it had really changed their perspective. You know, somebody said, I never really thought about ethics before. And now if I look at everything that way, and I talk to my parents and I talk to my friends about it, and it's changed how I'm seeing the world, especially with the pandemic. And one of the comments I really liked is somebody said, this class has made me see how complicated things are, that they're not black and white. And that complication has been really helpful for like understanding and making meaning of things. One of the things students like is that they often say, oh, it's so nice that you're like objective and don't have opinion and don't judge us. And I'm like, well, you know, I do have an opinion, a very strong opinion about everything all the time, but I try to keep it to myself for a while at least, and give people a lot of space. And so that class gets a lot of diversity of ideas out. And I think people commented on finding that really valuable, being able to have conversations about important topics with people who they disagree with and see the world differently from. One of the things about going remotely is, as I think about the future, I think one of the things that worked well this semester is that we had that 6 weeks before break. So we built relationships, got to know each other, and had inside jokes and whatever. And that kind of, I think, held us together through the switch to online. So, and I really emphasize, you know, ethics is about people and groups and communities. And so getting the diversity of opinion, making people feel safe enough to be able to say the thing that might be unpopular, but is their truth. So
that's great. I wanted to thank you, Meeghan, for doing this and for talking to me today. And I appreciate all that you do for the students here at Springfield College. So thanks.
You're so welcome.